French parking management giant Indigo has come under fire for some job listings. The problem with the listings? Well, the listings said that English was mandatory, compulsory, and that the knowledge of French was desired, a practice that is illegal in Quebec. But let's talk about that a little bit more. Just what does the law say when it comes to job postings and required languages? Julius Grey joins us on the line, Montreal-based constitutional lawyer and a senior attorney at Grey Casgrain. Mr. Grey, welcome back to the show.
Hey, always a pleasure.
So, listen, this is a job to work at a parking lot, right? So, it is, and the company says this was just a mistake, an error. I bet you they post the same job across the country, and they said, English required, French would be nice. Of course, people here in Quebec have lost their minds over the posting. What does the law say when it comes to that? For working at a parking lot and posting up a job, what does the law say when it comes to what languages can be required?
Well, there is no obligation to require French. Although there is a problem, people are entitled to be served in French, but that's a different issue. But you remember that somebody who comes in as an immigrant, a refugee, or even a Quebecer has to find a job. It can't be that you can't work if you don't speak French, because you can't have an immigration policy. What is illegal is saying English obligatory, because Bill 101, Bill 96 now says that you cannot require a person to know a language other than French unless you get a specific derogation. You'd get that, for instance, if you were looking for an English teacher or if you were looking for somebody to present cases before the federal court in the whole country. The derogations are not easy to get, and people generally don't bother knowing that you need both English and French in Montreal. So the mere statement French is an asset rather than is obligatory is not in itself illegal. Although sometime later somebody could complain to the office that they weren't served in French. But, it raises a different problem, and I once again reiterate that in a country where people come in as immigrants or refugees and don't speak either language, you have to have them work. You can't sentence somebody to unemployment until they've learned French. The problem is requiring English. It's absolutely silly. We live in a city where both languages are necessary if you work with the public. If you look at, for instance, law offices, hospitals, etc., of course you need both languages. And it's ridiculous, and it's also discriminatory against bilingual francophones. Because, a person can use any asset he has, your excellent knowledge of computers or of mathematics, your impeccable appearance, whatever. All of these can be used as assets. But knowing English is something that you can't find out. If an employer in an interview asks you, do you speak English, it's illegal in the same way as asking a woman, do you intend to have children? And I think that's just plain wrong and silly. And what it means is that a bilingual francophone loses a chance because a bilingual anglophone can have his interview in French rather, and everybody knows he speaks English. Whereas a bilingual francophone can lose that edge. No reason to discriminate. No reason to have those people who have taken the trouble and to expand their own personal culture and to learn the other language, which after all is spoken by a large percentage of people in Montreal. No reason to put them in an inferior situation. So it's a silly law.
We're with constitutional lawyer Julius Grey. We're talking about language requirements in job postings, what's legal, what's not. Mr. Grey, I would imagine some of this devolves into theater of the absurd at times here. So I want to get further insight into this. Let's say you run a bookshop and it's an English bookshop. You can't that would be a job where you could you would have to get special permission to say English speaker first. You'd have to get permission for that.
Yeah, you'd have to have permission. You have to derogate to say that this job requires it. Because there may be jobs at an English bookstore, for instance, cleaner, which doesn't require knowledge of English, and then you can't ask it, even though it's very convenient to that environment. It's all there was a court case about that in which the Court of Appeal urged people to interpret the section reasonably, ville de Terrebonne, but right now the Office de langue française is in a militant mood and is unlikely to grant derogations in any but obvious cases, like English teachers. And, I think the whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. And the more languages you know, the better. Look at this. In Scandinavia or in France or in Germany, if you work in a restaurant, they might well ask you to speak English. In the tourist industry in England, they might well look for people who speak French. It's knowledge is good. There's no reason to put unilingualism on a pedestal.
Okay, but having said that, right, employers can still say, okay, French required and English is an asset, fully well knowing that they want someone who's bilingual. Can they still put in a job posting, French required, English an asset? That's still okay, right?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think what the law says, French required is not required. You can hire somebody who doesn't speak French or English. The question is, can you ask somebody to speak English? And the law seems to say that a unilingual francophone is entitled not to be under any disadvantage.
And of course, there's there's how the law is written, and there's how the law is actually put into place. I'm thinking about tons of industries in this city, burgeoning industries like video games and visual effects that the government has spent a lot of money putting subsidies in to build those industries in the province. And the workplaces, from what I've told from people who work there, they're pretty much English workplaces because they're dealing with Hollywood or they're dealing with big companies in the U.S., right?
I'm sure they don't all get derogations. I think it just happens that way. In my office, I don't get derogations. I have a number of lawyers and so on, and both languages are used all the time. Nobody's complained yet. But in an interview, you have to be very careful because if you ask somebody, do you speak English, they can go and complain.
Okay, and I guess for our listeners who maybe they own a small business or they own a business, what should they be taking away from this? What should they know if they own a business? They're going to be hiring people. What should they be thinking about when they make those job postings? My own thought is, how can you ascertain that somebody speaks English if you can't ask the question? Because asking the question is asking for some sort of fine or a visit from the Office Québécois. I would, in fact, put it to employees, to people who are looking for a job, to inform the employer of their own initiative that you speak English. In other words, start speaking English or say, oh, and by the way, I'm perfectly bilingual, and without forcing the employer to put the question, because that will increase your chances. The employer is probably scratching his head, how could I ask that without getting into trouble? And my advice to candidates would be to make it clear if you speak English. And what about the job posting itself? What can you tell us about, let's say you're using one of these large platforms around the world, jobs.com or Indeed or whatever they are called, right? Or LinkedIn. What about the posting themselves? Can you post the job in English?
You can post the job in the Gazette and so on. You can put it in English. What you cannot do is say English required.
Gotcha. Okay, Mr. Grey, we'll leave it there. I want to thank you so much for discussing the legal aspects of this story. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
That's Julius Grey, Montreal lawyer and senior attorney at Grey Casgrain.